this Sunday on Press Pass. Amid increasing demands for property tax reform, many Ohio voters turned out to support their local students and schools. Over 66% of school tax issues passed, marking a 15-point increase from last year's election, when only 51% of issues were approved. Renewal levies also saw overwhelming support, with 91% passing. So here to weigh in on that and the major Democratic wins we saw across the country, retired professor of political science from Baldwin-Wallace University, Dr. Tom Sutton. Dr. Tom Sutton, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
So looking across other parts of the state, did you see such support for tax issues and voters giving their approvals like we did here in the Valley?
Yes, we saw several of the levies pass in Cuyahoga County and other parts of Northeast Ohio, as well as across the state. Keep in mind, there are a lot of other kinds of levies that were on the ballot as well for police, fire, different kinds of ordinances, city charters. I think what you're seeing is that despite the talk about property taxes being a burden, which we know we've had property tax increases recently, people still see that local taxation is necessary to support schools, libraries, cities, and in an environment where they're seeing cutbacks both from the state and the federal government in these areas, particularly education. I think that actually is feeding more into people's passing these levies than the issue of the amount that's being levied, and particularly also because many of these were renewals, which means there won't be necessarily a huge tax increase. It's a renewal of an existing levy.
And I wonder, what do you think this says about these areas right now, especially as some people join those growing calls to abolish property taxes?
Well, I can certainly see the reasons why. Again, we've had property values increase dramatically up here in Cuyahoga County, around 30% increase a few years ago, which then was accompanied by property tax increases that were automatic because these were not taxes tied to the House Bill 920 freeze on taxes until you vote again. And so that's where I think you're seeing what we saw again, like the 70s, where House Bill 920 was passed to put freezes on these kinds of things. However, property taxes pay for up to half or more of the expenses of cities and school districts and libraries throughout the state. So the big question is, if you're going to get rid of the property tax, what are you going to replace it with?
So how do you think the property tax issue will play out going into the next year? Do you think they'll get the signatures needed to get that on the ballot?
I think it may be a bit of a long shot, and even if it does get on, I think what you might see is a preemption with reform measures short of abolishing the property tax that may come from the legislature. And so we may not see this on the ballot as a result, or if it does go, I think again, seeing that we saw these levies pass, we might see a similar kind of vote against such a measure to completely abolish the property tax.
And elsewhere across the country, we saw some major Democratic wins, like the Virginia governor's race and the New York mayoral race. Was this expected after President Trump's win last November, or were some of these surprises?
I wouldn't say they're surprises because this is really in the context of A, the incumbent party in the White House tends to lose seats. This is an off-year election. B, New Jersey is a predominantly Democratic state, though they split back and forth on the governor's seat. But most important, this is a reflection on how people are reacting to the last 10 months of the Trump administration's policies. So in Virginia, you saw a Democrat get elected, first woman for the state of Virginia, Spanberger. This is a state that has hundreds of thousands of federal employees, many of whom have lost their jobs. New Jersey, we saw among the Latino vote a big shift away from Trump and towards the Democrat who won, Mickey, sorry, missed her name, but the Democrat there. Also, these are moderate Democrats that ran and won, and one CIA service, the other military service. So I think those things really are a presage of what we might see next year. Again, it's very much a referendum in some ways on what's happening in the White House and in Congress.
And when it comes to the Democratic wins and Republican losses that we saw from Tuesday's election, how much was the government shutdown a factor in this, or were there other factors?
I think that was probably the primary factor, front and center, going into this election, seeing the potential and now reality of SNAP benefits being delayed, the possibility of seeing the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act expiring and not being renewed at the end of December, which is why Democrats are holding this up in the Senate. These things affect tens of millions of people, including in Mahoning Valley, in Cuyahoga County, and across the state and across the country. These are real effects, not kind of theoretical things that, well, whatever Congress does, it doesn't affect me. These are affecting people. Hunger centers are running out of food. There can't be anything more real than that. And I think we saw the vote accordingly in Virginia, New York, and in New Jersey.
And Tom, before I let you go here, we just got a new congressional map here in Ohio that has Mahoning County split between Dave Joyce and Mike Rulli. Do you think this could weaken the representation Mahoning County is able to have or get in Congress?
I don't think it's going to weaken. This is a bit of a back to the future because before, in the last map, 2012 to 22, you were split at that time. You join several counties, including Cuyahoga, that have also been split in this map. Some of them already were. What you really have, though, is two Republican congressmen. I would suggest it's a benefit in that David Joyce, who will be representing the 14th district northern part of your county, has a lot of experience in Congress. Michael Rulli, who's your current and future representative going into next year, is new to Congress, relatively speaking, been about a year or so. So I think because they're Republican, both as Republicans, they will pretty much vote together. And certainly on local issues that affect the county and cities directly, congressmen tend to, even if they're different parties, come together to advocate for those issues.
All right, Tom Sutton, thank you so much once again for your insight.
Great to be with you. Take care.
Have a good one.